my hardware. I do not have a dedicated spot for my hardware to go, and so all of this has just been hanging out of my workbench and it's driving me nuts. So I've been looking around at how other people house their hardware, and I liked one. There was a clamshell style one that opened up and had a bunch of these bins in it. It mounted to the wall, and I thought about going with that design. However, I started thinking about it, and I thought about this underutilized space under my workbench. And there are very few items that I would be okay with tucking underneath here and just pulling out whenever it's needed. But a hardware like caddy of some sort would definitely be on that list. So instead of putting it up on the wall, I went ahead and sketched out something for this space. And since I haven't learned to program like SketchUp yet, I'm just going to be building it by ear from this point forward. So wish me luck. I was given 4 giant pieces of 1/2-inch MDF, so that's what I chose to make this project from. I started with making a body. I cut 4 pieces, 2 at 13 inches wide and 2 at 14 inches wide, making all of them 26 inches tall. Then I used my Kreg pocket jig to drill a few pocket holes, then simply put them together. It was at this point I realized I forgot to put in pocket holes on the other end. Silly mistake, but I ended up using nail gun to attach the remaining side. Check for square, going diagonal to diagonal. Looks like I'm only a 32nd off. It's good enough for me. So I cut a bottom from 3/4 inch wood and then used my nail gun again to put it in place. I grabbed my casters and set them in place and then used a pencil to mark all of these screw holes. Then I came back and drilled a pilot in each location and then screwed them in place. So the reason I chose wood for this portion is because I really just wanted good meat for these screws to grab a hold onto. And with it being my first time to use MDF, I'm not sure how well it will hold up over time with so much movement in these parts. The last thing I want is for these to start developing slop and then me having to replace the bottom. So I figured this was just a safe bet. So far so good. Okay, now to make the bins. Now I could have bought the bins, however, I simply don't mind taking the time to make them myself, so that's what I did. I first started with figuring out how big I wanted my bin, and then I just started cutting strips to the different dimensions. After cutting several for each size, then I would come back and cut them into the individual pieces needed to make up the bin. I used my miter saw to make the 45s on the sides. Since these pieces are too small to set up a stop block, I used a Sharpie to make a mark on the fence so that I could easily line them up. After cutting the squares for the bottom, I then tilted the blade to 45 and ran them through to bevel one side. Now it's just a matter of putting everything together. I glued and then nailed each one of the pieces, starting off with the bottom and attaching the sides. These small bins are 3 inches wide, 3 inches deep, and then 2.5 inches tall. Since I was wanting to use the French cleat system, I once again cut some strips and then beveled one side. I then glued and nailed these in place, making them roughly 1.5 inches apart from one another. Now I just repeated all the steps to make medium-sized bins. I made mine 5.5 inches deep, 5 inches wide, and 3 inches tall. I decided on 2 rows for these medium bins and placed them 1 inch and 7/8 apart. I wanted 1 large bin for the bottom, so I repeated all the steps and then placed the cleat 6.5 inches down. My large bins are 5 inches deep, 13 inches wide, and 5 inches tall. Well, it certainly made a mess, but I think I like this. Yeah, I think it's going to work out really well for my shop. I mean, I love the French cleat system in general. You just can't beat the flexibility it offers. I could take off each one of these bins and take it off to wherever I'm working. I could swap out the medium size for the smaller size or vice versa. Still have tons of room to add on more if I need to, in the back as well. This hole, I did leave it empty for right now, but I actually plan on making it probably into clamp storage and dowel and threaded rod storage in the future. So we'll have to see what that ends up being. But yeah, it rolls really nicely. Doesn't feel it's gonna tip over at all. And the best part is it tucks really nicely right underneath my workbench and out of the way. I do still need to paint it, of course, and I also want to label each one of these containers. And then I just need to pilfer through all of my hardware and find a little bin. So if you'd like, I can post a updated video showing y'all the painted final project. But in the meantime, what do you think? Let me hear your thoughts below. And like always, I'll see you next time.